Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So today's episode is with Dave Elsner, the tech sales guy. He's got a long, illustrious career in sales and VPs of sales. And he's got his own little consulting practice that is focused on tech companies. He's got a great story about going out and selling cookies as a 5-year-old, and that's how he got started in sales, and he really loves sales. But we talk about how to connect with our buyers, and as they're just another human being, and we need to be able to connect with them. We talk a little bit about some ideas around hiring salespeople, how he built great sales teams, and we talk about having that conversation and what sales managers need to do to be able to support their team. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. So, Dave, I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to jump on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
So we had a little chat in the proverbial green room, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think you bring a different perspective because we kind of overlap in some of the things that we do, but it's always good to have, for an audience to hear different perspectives and at different times. And I think we'll have an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I learn something new every day from people like you.
I think that's the other way around, but okay. My goal is to have fun and the audience to get some value. So we'll jump right in. So let's start with this question. When I got somebody that's been around the block and been in sales and knows what they know, how the hell did you get into sales? Like, what was did you think about that as a 10-year-old and want to do it, or how'd you get there?
I thought about it as like a 5-year-old. I hate to be cliche, but I was a born salesman. My first sales job was selling Oreo cookies door to door because I was upset the Girl Scouts were making all the money.
So were you going to the market buying packaged Oreos, or were you taking them out and selling them in little baggies?
No, I was taking my allowance money, buying Oreos, and then going door to door and representing myself as a Boy Scout. Well, I think I was a Cub Scout at the time, actually. It kind of started there. And then I was very entrepreneurial, all through school. I had curb painting businesses, wash cars. I was always going door to door to figure out how to make money.
All right, hold on. Curb painting business? Where'd you grow up?
You paint the address on the curbs.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of people that have seen that or know about that. That's where did you grow up?
I grew up in Anaheim, California. Okay. And I killed it in the summers, man. I was charging $5-6 per curb, and I probably did 300 curbs a summer. Nice. So it was, it was, and it continued from there. We did flyer distribution, we did window washing, but whatever I could do to make money, and I would say my dad wouldn't buy me luxurious things. So I was able to buy my own stereo system, my own beach cruiser, which I think propelled and motivated me further into sales after, I got out of college.
Well, you had the entrepreneurial bug, right? Where you were going to go out and drive and deliver the value and reap the rewards. But that sort of, like, you can't do that, especially as a young guy, without some creativity and some a work ethic that inspires you and liking things, right? Whether that's a boat or a bike or a stereo, is what we refer to as intrinsically motivated. That's awesome. So,
That
and
was me.
you started that at 5 selling Oreo cookies.
That was
What was your pitch? What happened when you walked through the door?
that was my first sales story. I told him I was with the Boy Scouts. The funny thing is my dad was a cop. And when I got home and bragged to him about all the money that I made, he told me I was creating frog. And that's what I heard as a 5-year-old. It was actually fraud. And the next week it made me go give all the money back.
Oh, really?
And then took it out of my allowance for the next 4 weeks. But that is when I got the bug, because I could convince people of things.
It was fraud because you were representing that the Boy Scouts were going to benefit, or was it that a Boy Scout was going to benefit?
Yeah, it was that I was representing the Boy Scouts selling cookies when actually they didn't sell cookies.
But the people bought because you were cute little kids out trying to hustle.
Right? Yeah, Grandma, Mom, all the family told me, you got to be a salesman. You're too charming.
Well, that's a great story. I don't like the part where you had to go give back all the dough. That would have been hard to do.
Yeah, well, lesson learned.
Yeah. So you go from being this little entrepreneur, you probably did that all the way through school. Like, what was your first sales gig out of college or as a young man?
It was during college. I sold cable TV door to door back in the early days of cable TV. So, the close rates were pretty good. It came down to a numbers game. How many doors could I knock on after I got out of school? I think the toughest part was the Hispanic areas, where I didn't speak the language. And so, trying to have a conversation about signing up for cable, with mixed languages was tough. Some good, valuable lessons there. But it was a great college job. I mean, I got to work when I want, as much as I wanted, to make as much as I wanted.
That's the best part of sales, is that it's literally the highest paid profession, because we're able to, there's no cap. We can go do, it comes down to how effective are we with our time.
Yeah. Hey, it is the best career in the world. I was able to coach all of my kids' sports, be there for, their school shows, take off on a Friday afternoon and do a weekend trip with the family. And a lot of jobs don't allow that kind of flexibility. And so I truly believe best career in the world.
Yeah, there's something, about sales with I think they call work-life balance now, but, and I had, when I was sales manager of different places, I would have salespeople like, I want to take Friday off to go see my kids' tennis match.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, why are you talking to me? Do I have to go? And they're like, no, I just, like, you hit your numbers, do what you want. I don't care if you do it in 10 hours or, 50 hours. You just got to do the work, and the benefits are there. So that's sort of how I looked at it when I became, in the management role, is like, if we're doing our work and we're hitting our numbers, what's the question? Like, just go do what we want to do.
I had the same exact stance when I became a sales VP. Hey man, you have unlimited vacation. Just make your numbers.
Right. And, the HR people will care about whether you're someplace or not, but, we can work around that. And just, all I asked was to let me know so that I can help cover things, while they were gone. But most of the guys that I worked with, they pick up the phone when they're on vacation. If they recognize the number of a particular customer.
That's right.
They weren't hiding.
Yep.
I know I had a conversation with a guy that I had just started working with. I was online at Disney World in Orlando and with my family. And we're just waiting online, right? My phone rings and I start talking to him, and he's like, "Where are you at?" And I'm like, "Disney World, right? Waiting online to get on the teacup thing with my kid." He's like, "Well, why are we talking?" I'm like, "You called me. Like, what do you want?" Right? And I got time to kill. But that was so foreign to somebody in a corporate world that you separate that. And I think that's my challenge, and a lot of salespeople's challenges, turning it off was sometimes an issue for me.
Yeah, you probably earned some respect from that customer. But
I think so.
I tend to agree with you. Have a good backup plan, somebody that's covering for you, and have only them call you if something's urgent and needs your attention. Uh, a sales job can be pretty stressful, and so you need to take those mental breaks from time to time.
You do, and sometimes that's like an extra hour at lunch. Sometimes it's a round of golf. Sometimes it's taking a Friday. I would get itchy after a week, being someplace on quote unquote vacation. And I remember I had a boss tell me, he's like, his HR lady would get frustrated because I had exceeded my corporate level of vacation time, but she knew I was out of town and he didn't care. And he told her to mind her own business because when I call him, he answers the phone. So if he's answering the phone while he's gone, he's still working. Yeah, it's that's the cool part of sales.
Yeah, that's a good boss.
Talk to me about the transition from being a salesperson to managing a bunch of salespeople.
Yeah, it's interesting. From that cable TV job, once I graduated college, I got my first real sales job in technology, which was selling phone systems. I did that because my uncle sold phone systems and was doing really well. And so I could use him as a mentor as I entered that business.
Okay.
I spent about 8 years as a direct seller and got asked to start up the first internet sales force for the phone company. And so we were selling T1s, which is about equivalent to the speed that's in your house right now, for like $3,500 a month.
I remember.
Yeah.
I bought one.
Yeah.
Those are expensive.
Yeah. And so, I built a phenomenal team with some really smart people that figured out how to crush our numbers by selling internet, by targeting the right customers, the right industries, by working the internet independent companies that were out there to set up better paths of internet for their cities. We ended up in 3 years in a row doing over 3,000% of quota. And so,
wow.
Yeah, it was quite a ride, man. I had salespeople absolutely crushing it. And then from there, we moved into network integration. I got my first sales director or regional vice president job, building network integration, which was a Cisco partner in essence, doing networking equipment at the time, and then collaboration. I was at the phone company and they were merging all the time. When they merged with AT&T, I wasn't happy about it. At the time I bled SBC Blue. And so I went looking external and found a company called Nexus that hired me as a sales VP. And we took them from 20 million to 800 million in 8 years. Sold them. Yeah, very impressive. It sold them to Dimension Data. I spent, my 2 golden parachute years there, and then decided to start this business. And, for me, I get the most joy training and mentoring salespeople and seeing them succeed. And so really what I did is I made that a business. I took all of the sales trainings that I did over the years, customer-centric selling, social selling, prospecting workshops, and I made it a business. And I just love what I do now. I'm back to a point. Hey, when I was running 400 salespeople, those were 80-hour weeks, traveling to 37 different offices. But now I got my life back, which is, I love it.
So, I mean, you were selling tech, which was high tech type work. So what do you attribute? What did you look for when you were hiring? You were looking at sales candidates, right? And were you looking at resumes? How did you discern whether they were going to be a good fit for your team and to be successful in the role? Hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book. the 7 critical mistakes CEOs make with their sales organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got to look at track record, but the most important thing I look at is what I call connectedness. Like, how well do they connect with other people? How well do they hold a conversation? Do they listen more than they talk? Are they inquisitive, curious? And then you look at other things like, are they competitive? I loved college athletes, because they've got that motivation built in.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are really, it's funny. I tried what do they call it? Personnel indexing, where they take a test. And discovered after a few months, salespeople are smart enough. They know how to answer those questions. And so I dumped that and just, started going with my instincts, including peer reviews and recommendations and things like that. But
so you had you had multiple people put eyes on the candidate and ask the right questions. I think that's a great, a great method to implement. We like looking at structured interviews where we're asking specific questions that are fairly high level and trying to understand how they think about sales, how they thought about their previous sales roles. Did they understand the stuff that they really needed to understand, like how their customers made money? If I ask, like you're selling tech right now for SBC Global, which we know they're not, but so how did your customers make money? What did they care about? And if they couldn't describe their customer with some detail, they weren't really thinking about sales, and they weren't necessarily committed to providing that value. Because if you don't understand your customer, it's pretty hard to be successful. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got a business partner that does engineering training, and they did a study of 10,000 business owners, CEOs, executives, and asked them what's the most important thing that you get from a sales team, including the salesperson and the engineer. 80% of them said they need to know my business.
Well, and the only way you do that is to come into, because I look at the sales discovery process as a conversation that a salesperson is having with another individual.
Yes.
And they should be really curious. There should be some empathy about the problems that they're going to encounter. There should be some skepticism about why that particular prospect is doing things the way they are.
Yeah.
It's really, it shouldn't feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be comfortable for the prospect, but it definitely shouldn't feel like they're getting the third degree from, a detective or a police officer. It's just a conversation that they were interacting with.
Yeah. And I often told my salespeople, it's the salesperson that cares the most that usually wins. And so you don't stop at the high level questions. You've got to, for instance, if they say my IT department is wasting time fighting cyber criminals, you got to ask how much, how many, how often, because that's where your value is in discovery. It's
how successful are they, right? Is that,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not just asking the one question and moving on and acting like a sideline reporter at a football game, right? They're just trying to wrap up 3 quick questions. But if we're not really listening to that prospect and leaning into that conversation and asking conversational questions that elicit more information, because they want to talk, they want to share their problems once they realize you do care. And if you don't care, like you said, people will sense that, and they're not gonna relate.
When you go into a first meeting, you have barriers you need to break down. You've got to earn some trust. You got to make them feel comfortable that you can help them, but you do that with questioning, not with telling a bunch of things. Telling is selling.
That is so true. Like being able to elicit those answers from those great questions, those good questions, those tough questions, right? That when they look at you like, wow, that's a good question. Okay. And then making them think a little bit. That's how you build that trust.
I didn't think of that.
And if we're not getting them to engage on that level, then we're not doing our job. And I think it starts with, I always position it as empathy rather than caring, but the emotion you're eliciting from that prospect is that this guy cares or this gal cares about whether or not I'm going to be successful, and whether this is a good fit. Did you have formal training as you moved through those corporate? They probably threw a lot of different sales training at you. Which ones of those resonated with you?
Yeah, until I became a sales VP, I'd probably been through a dozen different sales trainings. God, I remember ones where they would video you, and then play back the video and everybody would critique it.
Yeah.
I remember questioning based etiquette, target account selling, Sandler. I wasn't a big fan of Sandler until I understood it better. Opening a meeting with, why am I here? Customer just looks at you like, what do you mean, why are you here?
Yeah, the context for that is hard to relate until you really get into. I mean, that takes a little guts to do what David actually taught. But I think the biggest problem. I mean, I'm Sandler trained. 30 years ago, I paid my own money to do that, and I think the biggest problem with Sandler is that salespeople use it as a weapon. Rather than as a great methodology to ask questions. I still find it coming out of my mouth without me thinking, like reversing. Why would you do that when, it's the right thing for them to do? But if they say it, it's gospel. And if we say it, it's a freaking salesperson saying something.
Yeah.
So,
I think through all of those trainings, I picked up little things here and there. When I got that first sales VP job at Nexus, I went out and looked at Miller Hyman. I knew that my sales force needed a common language, a common process. I would ask some people, where are you at in the sales process? And I got 12 different answers. So I ended up going with customer-centric selling.
Okay.
Which is questioning based etiquette. It's buyer centric. It's a lot of what many sales trainings teach. But the key to customer centric is we integrated the team's solutions into the role plays. And so we had sales ready messaging. The role plays were based on what they were actually selling. And therefore they adopted it more easily and executed against it better. And so, I became certified in 2006. And as a sales VP, I actually trained my own salespeople, me and one other guy, which I think was super impactful because I knew their industry and I knew how to coach them. Mm-hmm. And another thing that led me to all of this is, I love standing with a group of 30, 50 salespeople and giving them new skills that I know they're going to be more successful with.
There's a I don't know, a sense of pride isn't the right word, but satisfaction when you see the light bulbs go off in the room, and if you don't do what you're talking about in that training room, where you give them the theory, you give them the steps and the process. But if you don't relate it for them in that role play, and everybody hates role playing, But to me, it's the fastest way to integrate what they're going to use, that language that you talk about, because they're all different and they're all the same. They all steal from each other, right? It's all there, and we all have our preferences. But if we don't make it a language so that we can ask a question, like what stage of the process are we in? What's the next clear step? If we're not able to have that conversation, you get 15 different answers from 10 guys, and it's a challenge.
I also think it's really important to have follow-up. You got to follow up with the managers monthly. You got to do one-on-ones with the reps for at least a year. You got to make sure the managers are doing role plays with their teams so that this stuff sticks around for a while. And a lot of sales companies fall short with that follow-up and follow-through. It's one of the biggest complaints I hear from sales VPs is, I put my sales force through sales training, but nobody uses it.
Well, and I would ask that question back to them, like, what have you done to ensure that it is coached on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? What are you doing in your sales meetings to help, right? Because it's almost like people do training and think that 3 days is going to be the inoculation to solve all the problems. And I've actually seen companies train the sales reps and hey, where are the sales managers?
Right.
They already know this stuff. No, they don't. They don't. They have no idea. This is go get them and bring them in here, because that is, they're the ones that are going to carry that through. They're that thread. And if they don't understand what's being taught in that language, you might as well be speaking in a foreign tongue.
Yeah, they have to be there. I like to make them coaches of the role plays. And so I do a pre-session with all the managers, and teach them what they need to coach during the role plays. Then they adopt it further and take it a lot more serious.
Yeah, because you're giving them a chance to look good in that room.
Yep.
The thing is, and this is just my philosophy, is I think training, when I engage with a customer, I want training to be the last thing that we do. There's so many things that need to get corrected typically.
Yes.
Their messaging is way off. They're not coaching. The sales manager isn't holding sales meetings that are worth the crap. They're not doing one-on-ones with their people. They're not even creating accountability. So the training is and some of those people probably shouldn't be there. So why invest, money into people that aren't going to take it seriously? So I'm kind of a weird guy in a development space, because I think sales training is to be the last thing that we do.
I absolutely agree with you. You got to get the blocking and tackling done first. I actually did a sales training earlier this year, 30 students, 3 days, and a week later they let go of half of them. And so it's like, you spent all this money to, give them these skills that now they're going to take to a competitor.
Yeah, you're helping out your competition.
Yeah.
So let me pivot a little bit. We actually talked about discovery, because we talked about process and methodology and being able to ask those questions. But I kind of want to get your perspective on something that I've been working on with salespeople. And the idea of prospecting seems to be like a big scary word to salespeople. And even if we call it outbound, that still is a sort of impediment. So I'm trying to reframe this concept of prospecting as just having this conversation and reframing it. And I wonder if you have any insights as to, because the audience is, business owners and entrepreneurs and senior salespeople, as well as salespeople. And, maybe we can help them see that prospecting is essential and critical. They know that.
Oh, for sure.
But if we don't do it and start putting stuff in the top of the funnel, nothing comes out the bottom.
That's right. That's the, science part of sales. It's It's a numbers game. You got to know your numbers. So, my take on modern prospecting is what I call it is it's really hard to do anything cold. Cold email, cold calling, unless your messaging is spot on and your timing is really good. The hit rates are so low nowadays. Mm-hmm. And so I actually like to warm those prospects up on LinkedIn. And so I go to LinkedIn, I find my ideal buyer, and then I follow them, I ring their bell, and I engage with their content, because LinkedIn notifications are a beautiful thing. If I look at somebody's profile, it says Dave Elsner looked at your profile. Then 3 days later, I follow them. Now they see Dave Elsner is following you. And then I start engaging with their content and trying to have a conversation with them, not just hitting the like button, actually making comments.
Yeah, that are meaningful.
Yes, that demonstrate your expertise. And by doing that, it creates this curiosity, and they end up looking at my profile. That's my door opener. Now I can send them a connection request because they're interested in what I do and who I am. And now we can start having a conversation. And so I'm not saying get rid of email and cold calling. I'm saying warm them up first. Get your brand known. If somebody sees my brand 5 to 9 times, they become comfortable with me and the barriers start to break down. And now that we're connected, they start seeing my content and all the value that I offer. They see that I'm a subject matter expert. And so when I make that call or email, my open rates go way up. And if the timing's not right, they're going to see me every day on LinkedIn, and eventually they're going to reach out. I do no outbound as a result. All of my business comes inbound because of things like podcasts and LinkedIn and YouTube, and driving traffic to my webpage. And it's a beautiful thing. Like, show the value and they will come.
And the other really, and I love that. And you can automate some of that, but the big piece of that has to be when you start to engage with content, it has to be authentic, because they'll see through that if it's just some fake BS. But the other thing is that it's not spammy. Mm-hmm. It's not that salesy BS where somebody, DMs you or asks for a connection and then immediately drops into a pitch. For me, that's a delete immediately.
Me too.
But maybe you know the answer to this question. How do I get on that franchise list of you have a wonderful background, your resume, blah blah blah, and we have these wonderful franchise opportunities. It's like, did you even look at my profile? I've asked them, they never answered the question. I wonder if you have any insight into that.
Yeah, no, hey, those are bots. They've got a bot working that pulls a list of 1,000 people and sends the same message. And we call it the connect and pitch or the pitch slap.
Pitch slap. I heard that the other day. I like that.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they say, based on your profile, you look like you could be a good business owner. It's like, I am a business owner. You didn't look at my profile, obviously.
Yeah. Your AI isn't working. Your automation isn't working.
Right.
But when you type that in and say, your automation is failing you, they respond like you've positively responded. They don't even read it. They just go to the next step in their process. And
there's no room for that kind of automation on LinkedIn. If it's not personalized, if you're not actually networking. And by the way, referral-based networking is one of the best things about LinkedIn. When I look at somebody's profile, I can easily identify all the people we know in common, and from there I can do referral-based networking, or I can name drop, which makes them more comfortable with me. But the trend of automation and AI in these kinds of tools is hurting it.
Yeah. And it's the thing that, because, my purpose with my business was to elevate sales managers and help them, because first time I got a job as a sales manager, I've told this story lots of times, but I was at a Christmas party and the end of the year, and I'd had a really good year. The company had a good year, and the two owners came over and said, "Hey, can we see you at the bar?" And I looked at my wife and I'm like, "All right, get your purse and your coat because this is either going to be really good or really bad." So, they offered me this sales director position, and I'm dumb enough that I took it. And we're having the conversation on the way home, and she's like, "That's great, but have you ever managed anybody before?" Because she knew that I could barely manage myself, let alone, 5 other people. And I'm like, wow, what a really good way to just pull the rug out from under me. But that challenge for me was something that I had to go do and fix, right? I had to get the skill set and keep learning and trying. But I remember that day they told me that the first thing we want you to do is fire Joe.
I've had that.
And I'm like, what do you mean fire Joe? And they're like, well, we want to get rid of him. His numbers aren't where they need to be. And I'm like, well, that's your fault. You haven't done anything to help him. So if you want to fire him before you announce my promotion. But if you want me to take this role, I want 90 days with him.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And he became the second best sales guy they had for years. But he just needed a little help.
Yeah, that's a great testament to coaching. I mean, my first sales manager job, I had the best mentor in the world. I was so lucky. He was super successful as a manager, and I was the top salesperson. They're always worried about promoting the top salesperson because you're going to lose those results. Yeah. What they didn't realize is that they're going to get 5 times those results now.
Sometimes, but sometimes it does. Like they're not mutually. They're not exactly the same skills. Being a top salesperson and being able to go coach. That's a different. You have the gift to be able to go out and be a successful salesperson, but you also have the gift of that empathy and the ability to coach people and care about them. And that's not always the case. So I wouldn't poo-poo your skill set. It's rare to be able to do both of those things.
Thank you.
So I like to. We've talked about a few things that I think are that give a perspective. You obviously have a lot of success in your career. What's the best way? If one of these business owners hears you and heard what you said and wants to reach out, what's the best way to reach Dave?
Yeah, all of my branding is under the Tech Sales Coach. So LinkedIn, YouTube, and my webpage is thetechsalescoach.com. So those are the easiest ways. Okay. I'm in LinkedIn a couple hours a day, so that's probably the quickest path to me.
All right. Well, we'll have all of those links in the show notes for everybody to reach out. So, last question I have is past or present, Dave, the relationship with cigars.
So I am a cigar golfer.
Okay.
And a funny story is I took a very important client out to a golf course one day. Coda de Casa it was called in Irvine. And he broke out some Cuban cigars. I had never had one before. I literally got high and could not finish the round of golf. So those, while I love golf course cigars, you got to stay away from the Cubans while you're golfing.
Yeah, well, those are they're different. And this is how I know they're different. I mean, I've had them, I tasted them, but my wife, who used to go for walks with her grandfather in Bavaria, in Germany.
Okay.
And he would take a cigar for a walk with the grandkids. And she was out walking with me one day in the woods, and I usually have a cigar with me. And she's like, what cigar is that? And I'm like, you never asked me what cigar. Why do you want to know? Right? My sands are coming out in me like, I don't understand the question. And she's like, it smells different. I'm like, it is different. Why do you think it's different? She's like, well, it smells like my grandfather's cigar. And then she told me this really cool story.
Ah,
And so, I mean, some people think that old Cuban cigars are really, they're just regular cigars. There's nothing special about them. And I think they're wrong. You got a little too much of the tobacco, and it got you going. And my wife, when my wife can tell something's different, then we know it's a different cigar. Um, so Dave, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time to come out here, and I hope that some of the folks in the tech space are that reach out to you, because I think you can add some value to their teams.
thanks, Walter. It was a great conversation.
Appreciate it. I love sharing secrets when I figure them out. That's why I created this program called Sales Hiring Secrets. Early in my sales management career, I was terrible at hiring salespeople. They failed more often than not. Then I discovered the secret that you can't hire salespeople the same way you hire everyone else. That's why everyone fails. In Sales Hiring Secrets, I'm going to teach you all of the secrets to understanding what you really need your salesperson to do, how to attract an ideal candidate with a unique job posting. I'll teach you how to save time and money by only interviewing candidates that are a good fit. I'll share the secrets to an interviewing process that ensures success. And the one big secret that everybody gets wrong is how to onboard a good salesperson so they ramp up quickly and stick around. I'm doing the Sales Hiring Secrets program on a monthly basis. You can click the link below to figure out when the next Sales Hiring Secrets program is scheduled, and you can sign up. Click the link below, and you get all the details. And it's designed for you to bring your entire team so you can get everybody up to speed quickly. Thanks. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.